Hello my fellow weirdos, my name is Marie Williams. Welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we are going to be doing a book versus movie with the classic gothic horror, Dracula. Hey guys, as I said for today's video, we're going to be doing a book versus movie of the wonderful Dracula by Bram Stoker. I decided to do it a little bit differently because I'm going to include two different adaptations. We're going to discuss Bram Stoker's Dracula, starring Gary Oldman, and then we're going to look at, I can't pronounce this guy's name, I'm so sorry. We're going to look at the new BBC miniseries. Is it Claes Bang? Claes Bang? Claes Bang? I'm going to call him Bang. He plays Dracula. Anyway, what I want to say before I start is that this is not a review of Dracula or a review of these adaptations. It is a sort of a look at the differences between the book and these adaptations, and if the changes and similarities worked or didn't. It's sort of about how well they did as an adaptation rather than how well they did as an independent film or show, just to clarify, because this seemed to cause some confusion with my Haunting of Hill House one. So anyway, everyone knows the story of Dracula. It is about the poor Mr. Harker, solicitor, who goes to Transylvania to work on some legal documents with a Count Dracula, who is buying a number of properties in the UK. He soon realises, obviously, that the Count is not human, neither are his three lovely brides, and that he's never going to leave this castle alive. There's also his fiancée Mina back home, who realises something's wrong when she doesn't hear from Jonathan in a while, and her best friend Lucy, who are at Whitby when poor Jonathan is meeting his fate in Transylvania. He manages to escape and comes back home to England, only to find that the awful demon has followed him there, and he soon attacks Lucy and Mina and threatens everything they love, and with the help of Dr. Seward and a number of Lucy's admirers, as well as Dr. Seward's friend Dr. Van Helsing, they decide that they are going to track Dracula down and stop him. So that's the kind of premise of the book. Wonderful read. If you've never read it before, definitely give it a go. But today we're going to talk about two separate adaptations. We have the Bram Stoker's Dracula, which has Gary Oldman, and then we have Mr. Bang, Claes Bang. I can't, I'm so sorry, I'm terrible at pronouncing names. From the newest adaptation, which was a mini-series this year on the BBC by the writers and minds behind Sherlock. And I wanted to discuss what they have in common with the book, what they've changed, and whether those changes worked as an adaptation, whether they were successful or not. So I'm going to start with Bram Stoker's Dracula, because to me that is the adaptation which is closest to the book. There are still changes, but it is the one that has sort of most true to the original source material. And it's my personal favourite because Gary Oldman will always be Dracula to me. Like, seriously, sexiest vampire ever. Anyway, before I get off topic and go on a tangent. Basically, in this, the main change is the insertion of a love interest between Dracula and Mina. In Bram Stoker's Dracula, Mina is the reincarnation of Vlad Dracula's beloved wife, who committed suicide when she believed he had died during these wars way back hundreds of centuries ago. Centuries ago. And when Jonathan comes to stay at the castle, he realises that there's more at stake than just getting away to more cultured society and finding lots more food available in England. There's also his beloved, I can't remember what his bride is called. His beautiful wife is there, reincarnated in the form of Mina, and that he has an opportunity to be with her again. So more reason to get rid of Jonathan, if anything, and more reason to move to London. When he goes back there, Mina starts to kind of feel the confliction between her very clear love and innocence and admiration for Jonathan, but also she is drawn to Dracula. He is familiar to her. He brings up feelings that she has never felt before, later realizes that they're lust. She's quite innocent. And she is torn, but inevitably chooses Jonathan before then kind of switching and kind of going to Dracula. But anyway, it's a whole love triangle between the three of them. I have to say that the addition of that love story is wonderful, and I think it's what makes this film particularly good. I love that Mina in this adaptation is so strong. She's the one who inevitably ends Dracula, ends his suffering. She does that being completely in love with him, because she does love both men. It's like there's two people inside her, there's two loves within her heart, and it just creates a whole wonderful different sort of set of stakes. It creates a whole different romantic side to it, and I think it's just really added to Bram's original tale in all the right ways. There are other changes, of course, some a little stranger than others. There's a lot more sex in the movie. Not surprising that they're going to do that. This Bram Stoker's book was written a long time before that type of thing would have been okay. But there is implications of what happens to Jonathan, for example, with the brides in the book, but that's as far as it goes. In this version, you flat out get to see what the brides do to poor Jonathan. You also have Lucy, who is a bit of she's a bit risque. She is a bit of a girl. She loves being admired and kind of leads all the guys on in this version, which is a bit like sad, because in the book she really genuinely cares for all three of the men and is heartbroken by having to choose one of them and let the other two down. But in this, she loves kind of leading them on. She also has her breasts out all of the movie, which I suppose is fine. But Sadie Frost is incredible as Lucy, to be fair. Also, at one point, Lucy, I'm pretty sure, has sex with Dracula while old Dracula is in wolf mode. That's a scene that I had forgotten until I watched it recently. Anyway, so yes, it's a lot more sexualized, but I don't think that really makes a huge difference to the adaptation in that sense. I think that it probably makes it more entertaining on film, and it would appeal to more of an audience, and I can understand why they put that in, because, you know, what do people not love more in movies than sexuality, nudity, and violence? And this has got all of it now. The only thing there, Dr. C-word in it is a heroin addict, and his asylum is horrifying. Like, all of the guards, for some unknown reason, are wearing cages on their head. I don't want to criticize Coppola, because obviously he's a legendary director, but that is just an odd decision for me. So he's not as lovely and sweet as he is in the book. He doesn't inject himself with morphine in the book, and his asylum is actually, like, he really genuinely cares for his patients, whereas in the movie he's a bit twitchy. Anyway, the other thing that I always find a bit weird and dodgy about that movie is Anthony Hopkins. Again, legendary actor. I love Anthony Hopkins, but good lord, the script makes him seem like he is just crazy. He's just kind of a bit rambly and incoherent. He also snogs Mina. Mina snogs him, Dracula, and Jonathan in the book, or in the movie, where in the book she's very much just all for Jonathan. He comes across as a bit nuts, and when you read the source material of Bram Stoker, you see that Van Helsing, to be honest, is a bit all over the place in the book. Bram Stoker does a really great way of presenting Van Helsing's accounts like he doesn't like that English isn't his first language, and when you're reading it, you can't help but put on an accent, and it's very obvious to you that it's not his first language, and he's brilliant for doing that. It's really well written. So some of the things that he says are lifts from the book, and it's kind of quirky and weird, but I don't know, when Anthony Hopkins played it, like, it's very strange. But overall, a fantastic adaptation, and I think that the addition of the love story really genuinely knocked it up. It elevated the source material and made the film just so much more than it could have been if it was just a straightforward adaptation. We move on to the newest edition. As I said, was a BBC short series written by the same people who write Sherlock. And this takes Dracula and brings it very much into the modern day, but still holds account of that source material. So in this version, Sister Agatha, who features only very, very briefly in the book and the previously mentioned adaptation, she is a main character in this particular version. She is a nun with attitude, someone who questions her faith constantly, but who also has expertise, shall we say, in certain areas of paranormal activity, the occult, things like that. So she's called upon when Jonathan Harker is eventually rescued and ends up at the convent, just as he does in the book. Her character in that series is freaking badass. She's awesome. She's strong, she's brave, she's smart, she's everything that you want from a female lead, and I love her. I wish we could have a series that was just Sister Agatha, frankly. I would watch that all day long. Anyway, Dracula making his plans, moving to the UK. There's all these lots of slight differences. The brides in this version, for example, are kept in boxes in the attic. They still have that famous scene with the baby. Only this time the baby comes back as a vampire, which is just really creepy looking. But it ends the same way with Jonathan throwing himself off, except in this version, Jonathan is turning into a vampire. And when he makes it to the convent, he is slowly undergoing this change. And Agatha and the others are trying to kind of figure out what's happening to him and how they can stop it before he sort of gets to that stage. And also knowing that Dracula is going to not be far behind him. And Mina comes to get Jonathan to help him, and he makes her leave because he can feel that he wants to rip her throat out with all those sort of vampire instincts coming up. He, silly boy that he is, invites Dracula in. And there's a bit where Dracula wears his skin to fool Mina and Agatha into being invited into the area that they're in so that he can then get hold of them. So yeah, very much darker, more violent, more graphic version than the book or the previous adaptation. This has gone sort of very much into the... I don't want to... It's not gore for gore's sake, because the horror has a place, but they're going for a shock factor with this one, and it works very well. Also, in this adaptation, the people that he bites, they aren't turned by drinking him in return. They're just automatically turned, but they're kind of like zombies, like creepy little zombies, and they rot, but are still alive, so they're like undead, and it's a horrible, awful curse. He's the only one who's kind of different than them. Anyway, so yeah, that obviously has lots of fun scare factor there. So he goes on board the ship, just as with the book, the original book and the original adaptation, and starts picking off all the sailors one by one. But in this version, Agatha is on board, and there's this whole mystery about who's in one of the rooms. It's wonderful. I really enjoyed that whole episode. And eventually Agatha stops him from reaching land, and the ship sinks, and everyone on board dies. And then we cut to the 21st century. Dracula wakes up. He thinks it's only been a day, but when he arrives, there's helicopters, cars, and Agatha, except it's not Agatha. It is her ancestor, and it's been a couple of 100 years, and he is now in very much the modern day. They take him in. They've been looking for him. They want to study him, and he manages to get out because he has a good solicitor and a lot of money, and it's against his human rights to be imprisoned. I love that whole bit. So he gets released. So yeah, as you can see, there's a lot of changes between that and the original source material. There's the time period, there's the addition of a kind of a lot more violence, a lot more graphic violence, a lot more modern aspects of it, like solicitors and Dracula discovering an iPad and the internet and things like that. And it's all really well done, I have to say. It was a very successful way of bringing Dracula into the modern day era. We still have the same characters, Mina and Jonathan from the past, and Sister Agatha, and then in the present we have the lovely Lucy, who is a beautiful, carefree character who Dracula is drawn to. And it's about him kind of coming to terms with the modern world. One of the things that they made changes-wise in this adaptation was that when he drinks your blood, he learns what you learned. He knows what you know. So if you're an accountant and he drinks your blood, he's now got mathematical abilities and he's a great accountant. So he starts to be very picky about who he eats in order to gain as much knowledge as possible. I really liked the new adaptation. They took a lot of the original features from the source material. So they took the characters, they took the kind of beginning of the story, but then very much changed trajectory after the ship when in this version it sinks and doesn't reach Whitby, whereas in the book and in the other adaptation it does reach Whitby and comes off as a black dog. And that's when it kind of twists completely on its head. I liked the addition of things like, you know, the memory being in our blood and DNA. I loved the addition of Sister Agatha. I think they all really worked. The only part that didn't really work for me overly was the end. I'll not spoil it, but I don't know. It just didn't do it for me. It was a bit contrite. I don't know. Maybe if anybody's seen it, you can let me know what you thought. But overall, definitely worth watching. Very good series. And Bang is like, Mr. Bang's version of Dracula is very good. He's no Gary Oldman. Sorry, guys. He's no Gary Oldman. But he is very good. He's got this kind of charming, like, Cockney quality about him. It's very sexy. And he definitely makes a good bad guy. He is very evil in it. You feel a lot less sympathy for him than you do for Gary Oldman's version. Maybe that's why I like Gary Oldman's version more, because you like really like Dracula, whereas in this you're like, holy crap, this guy is awful. So yeah, that's the sort of contrast there between two completely different adaptations of exactly the same source material. The good changes, the bad changes, and overall how both of them, even though they went in completely different tangents and completely different ways with the source material, they both honoured that source material, and the adaptations both worked really well in contrast and in conjunction with that source material. So yeah, two great versions of the same book. What about you guys? What is your favourite adaptation of Dracula? Let me know in the comments down below. Are you a comedy lover? Did you like Dracula Dead and loving it? Are you with me in the romantic Bram Stoker's Dracula? Or did you prefer one of the very modern remakes? So let me know, and I will have a debate with you. A nerdy movie / horror book debate. And also, what did you guys think of these adaptations? Do you agree with me that certain parts were good, certain parts were bad? Let me know in the comments down below. I always love to hear from you guys, and I always love to get into nerdy discussions about horror films and horror books. So yeah, join me on that one. But that's me for now, guys. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to hit the bell button so that you get a notification every time I post new content and you guys never miss out. Leave me a like, leave me a comment. Not only does it help me with the algorithm on here, but it also means that I get to connect with you guys, which is the entire point. I want to know more horror weirdos out there, and that's me for now. Bye.